Welcome back. It is Bone. And in this one, let's go ahead and take a look at some custom work that I have done. Now, this one's going to be pretty interesting because I never reviewed this figure, which is the Rebirth Cyborg. Had him for months and I just never got around to reviewing him. Now, I did feel it kind of redundant if I went through my whole usual review, which was taking a look at the box and all that. Everybody's pretty much had this figure for a while, but it was new to me when I recently opened him up. And I did have some ideas and did a little bit of customizing on him, so I thought I would let you guys check it out. Now, this also involves doing some modding, which of course everybody's always curious about. I'm still going to do that video where I take a figure from start to finish and show you all of the mods that I do and how I do it, give you some tips, and this will allow you to get a lot more range and articulation out of your DC Multiverse figures. So we'll talk all about that. Take a look at this figure, some accessories that I added for him, some alternate hands, and even do a little bit of figure photography. So let's jump right into it. Let's take a closer, more detailed look at this cyborg figure. Now, this also happened because I opened up that Green Arrow. I guess it was the Page Punchers Injustice one. He had some pretty horrible pauldrons on him, and I removed them. And I just really enjoyed that sleeveless look without the pauldrons. And for some reason, the same thing came around when I opened up this Cyborg. You can see on the standard release, looks kind of bungled up. I mean, the pauldrons, plus he's a pretty stiff figure. Had a hard time getting any waist articulation out of him. And that culminated in me doing this custom, adding a lot of details that I thought were missing. Now, first off, this is based off of the original Murder Machine body from the Dark Knight's Metal. Pretty much had completely forgotten about that figure. I still have one that I'm doing like a little bit of customizing on. Maybe one day I'll show it to you guys. But that is where this body is based on. Now, although it is a pretty good representation of Big Stone, Cyborg from the comics, a character that has a very long history, doesn't go all the way back, but he does go back to like, I think the late 70s or early 80s, something like that. Originally pretty much highlighted with his Teen Titans run and that older costume that kind of out of date, but maybe one day McFarlane will take a, will tackle that version of Cyborg. But he is well represented in all forms of media. He's in the comics, he's in the movies, he was in Justice League, he is in the animated films, the Teen Titans version of him, like the one we have right here. We did, already receive the movie version from McFarlane, and we also got that, gigantic cyborg from Flashpoint, which is pretty hilarious. But it is a pretty cool figure, although it is representing more of the way he was in Flashpoint. But people were still starving for their comic version of Cyborg to add to their Justice League lineup and to have in their collection. Nice representation of Cyborg, but there was a lot of details missing. And once again, I had to, mod him and make him something that I enjoyed and want to display, and basically making it really fun to have in hand. So pretty cool. The color scheme is really awesome. The contrast of the black and the gray, the metallic parts really work. And you also get that hint of red in certain spots of the costume. So pretty nicely done for what it is from Arlen. Now, taking a closer look at the head sculpt, really nice job. You have that split, down the middle of the skull showing the human side and the cyborg side of Victor Stone. Pretty nice detail. really looks like he does in the comic book. So I'm happy with the head sculpt. I just went ahead and added my own little paint details and stuff like that to give it a little bit more flavor. It was a little bit bland. Added even some chrome silver to like the ear pods and some of the parts of the faceplate. But we were waiting for a cyborg for our collections, and McFarlane did come through. Let's go ahead and take a look at the head articulation. He does look down pretty well. Now, when you first get this figure out of the box, even if you heat him up, he doesn't look up very well. I would say he looked up pretty much about that high. But once you do the mod, I'll show it real quick. I think first of all, what really helps is extending the neck peg. Now, I already did it here, so I popped off the head. And I'll show you the neck peg. I didn't have a lot of these double small barbell neck pegs. That's where both sides are like the small little ball. So I didn't have one longer, but I did want to raise his head just a couple of millimeters off of the neck. So you could see where I split it and then added the little nail in the middle and glued it together. Once you let it dry, it won't come apart, won't give you any trouble, but you are able to raise the head a little bit. And when you look down into the porthole in the neck, you could see where I shaved a little bit around the neck hole, and I made the slot, which allows the barbell to lean back further, giving you a lot more range and articulation. So now he looks down really far to where his chin, touches his chest, and you could see he looks way up, way more than before. Now, this allows you to do a lot more posing, flight poses, looking up, really opens up your range of motion in the head. You still got right to left, and you can tilt the head for some attitude. And the main thing I think is the way it looks on the body. Besides giving them a little bit more height, it also looks a lot more proportionate. So the head isn't so scrunched down on the neck. And the added benefit is the added articulation by raising that head up just a little bit. Now, since we're up here at the head portion of the figure, you can see where the traps are. That's where the pauldrons are glued into the figure. Now, instead of just warming it up and completely pulling them out and then refilling the hole, I just warmed it up and followed the shape of the traps. You could see here in the trap portion of the figure, and followed the shape of the traps, leaving them where they are. That way I don't have to refill it in. Then all I did was do a little reshaping, sanding, even heating it up and like flattening it down with a tool to smooth it out. And then I just painted it with a high silver and then with a gunmetal silver on top of that to darken it up and dirty it up a little bit. Because if you look at this cyborg, he's not completely like a shiny silver. He's kind of dirty and grimy, which is awesome. So you have a lot more dark, metal area throughout the figure, which is very appealing. Now, at the same time, looking at the upper body, he does have a cyborg emblem on the chest. Now, depending on what version of cyborg you see in the comics, this is the way he is represented. And that's one thing when you're doing customs, you can always pick out parts that appeal to you. It doesn't necessarily have to match exactly. Now, you could be going for a certain version of a character where you want to, make the figure look exactly how it did in this certain comic. But you always have that artistic license to add something that looks good to you from a different version and apply it to the custom that you're working on. Case in point is that red sensor that he has in the middle of his abdomen. It is a big identifiable part of Cyborg's costume in a lot of the comics. Now, that doesn't mean he has it in all of the iterations of the character, but I felt it was missing where this one in the original standard release, it just looked like a big empty spot. I just went ahead and added this extra little custom fodder that I really had laying around. I'm not even sure where this came from. At first, I thought it was from that Endless Winter Batman Batarang with the big red dot, but no, that's not where they came from. It's from something else, probably from a Bane that I took apart or something like that. But surprisingly, it did fit perfectly right in the space of the trunks below the abdomen. Glued it in, painted it, and for me, it just really finishes off the character. Now, going back to the shoulders, once you remove the pauldrons, I love the way the shape of the figure is now. Where if you lean back the shoulders, it gives them that, broad look. You can even bring the arms forward, which completely changes the demeanor of the figure. But at least it feels more open, and you can put them in a lot of different positions by removing those shoulder pauldrons. Take a look at the waist articulation. Now, once again, I did mod this because at first it was really tight. Even when I warmed them up, you still could not get no forward crunch. I think it even had negative crunch. So I went in, took them apart, did the mods, and now we'll take a look at the finished articulation. You do have smooth side to side, and it even goes deep in each direction. You got the full tilt-a-whirl at the waist, lower waist swivel, upper chest swivel. You could twist them, get him in some dramatic poses. And now he does have a semblance of a forward crunch. Not as much as I would like, but trust me, from where I came from, this added forward crunch really adds to the posability. Get him in an easy T pose. You got the shoulder, it gives you a lot of articulation. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbows that look really nice, really clean. Straighten them out, going down. You have all that sculpting and added cybernetic technology, which is awesome. Down into these hands. Now, I really hated these hands from Murder Machine. The pulsar one on the right side is okay, but this gripping hand on the left side, just not a fan of it. Now, another little detail I did is I did paint the wrist ball joints, but I only painted it half and half. So half side is silver while I left the other side black. What this allows you to do is to match up the costume where it has silver on top and black underneath. The ball joint matches up with those colors. Even on the other side where you have the repulsor hand, it matches up nicely. Painting that wrist ball joint silver and black. Nice. Pretty nice little addition that I added on my own. Now let's take a look at the lower body, at the thighs. You have a slight thigh swivel, pretty good. I mean, it's manageable. Of course, this allows you to move the boot from side to side without having a thigh cut. Now you can add a little bit more articulation by modding the upper leg. I didn't do that on this one because I feel like Cyborg doesn't need to, be doing all kinds of acrobatic poses. But if you want to go that step further, you can add that a little bit more swivel in the thighs, kicks up pretty nicely, kicks back as well. Now the leg kicks back like this because the trunks are made of rubber. Of course, he has double jointed knees. Straighten them out. You got the ankle articulation. We have seen this before, so nothing new. Going into the back, love all the textured design and added sculpt work. And that needs to be pointed out. The legs are really nicely sculpted out with all the technology infused into the legs and throughout the costume. Moving up the back, I love this back, especially now with the shoulder pauldrons not there to block it. You can push those shoulders forward, kind of like he's doing a rear lat spread, flexing that wide back. Really, really great looking figure. Now that I have taken all of the things that I didn't really enjoy out of it, he's really fun to display and do figure photography with. So looks really clean, looks really nice. Love this figure now. Great addition to my Justice League. And now all I have to do is buy another one so I can have one in its original standard release form, which eventually I will do. Now, you only got one accessory with the standard release, and that is this big mechanicalized gun cannon. Now, this is from, I think, the animated John Stewart, where it was a construct of a weapon. And then they used it with the Batbot as, one of his arms as a blaster. And now they ported it on to this figure. It has a big hole in there. You just remove the hand and slip the arm in there, and you have the cannon. Pretty functional. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to go into my fodder where I have all of my guns and ammunition and stuff like that, because I just feel like this doesn't look like it was made by Cyborg. I'm not sure why. I think they should have done a blaster that was more reminiscent of the one they gave us with the Blue Beetle, just with a little bit more of a mechanical look to it. But that shape, of like a blaster cannon. So this is really a letdown for me. Not really happy with that. So now I'm gonna show you the accessories that I gave him. Now, first off, don't really like that left hand that he has, so I did make him a fist. Now, this is a really easy fist to come by because it is from the Hush Batman. I think we have blue ones, black ones. We also have a multitude of them in our fodder boxes. All you have to do is paint it silver. Now, it doesn't have to be a bright silver because, of course, the costume has, dark splotches on it and more of a metal tone to it. So I painted it, and then it didn't matter to me if a little bit of the paint rubbed off. It just added to the effect of matching up with the figure. But that fist just completely changes the attitude of this figure. You have so much more fun doing figure photography and posing him, all by just adding this fist. And while I was thinking about it, I was like, well, who else uses the same hands? And it dawned upon me that the Green Lantern is Batman, the collector's edition, which I'm in the process of getting another one. So I'll have more extra hands because I'm going to do a custom of that one. And he uses the same type of hand with a little bit of texture, knuckle dusting in there. So doesn't fit exactly, but it's passable. And even this open hand really adds a lot more fun to the figure when you're posing them, when you're firing off cannons. Now, speaking of cannons, I had to find my fix to that, the one they gave us, which I was not a big fan of. Now, my first thought was I have multiples of the DC Universe Classics Cyborg. In fact, he's right here in front of me. And I have a lot of these attachments left over. You have his blaster, and you have like a sonic blaster that came with him. Now, although these could be seen as a little bit small, they do kind of work. I mean, it looks okay. It's not bad. And for sure, if this is all you have, it's better than the one they gave us. All you have to do, since these have like a plug, is remove the whole hand and also the wrist ball joint. And this plugs right into that hole, and you can, display him and use these attachments, as you want. But I still wanted to go deeper. So I went ahead and made my own hand cannon. Now, this one comes from the KGB Beast from Mattel. Now, I made a custom KGB Beast where he had both arms, because in the version they released, he had this permanently fixed to his arm, so you couldn't remove it. I think it has something to do with how he ended up being in the comics with like a bunch of armory and weapons, and even that he had to cut off his arm when Batman trapped him in that sewer tunnel. But luckily, I had one laying around and it was not being used. So I went ahead and removed the plastic from the hole here in the back, painted it, dirtied it up a little bit with some gunmetal and some black wash. And surprisingly, this porthole fits perfectly onto this arm. And this just looks a lot better to me. It looks something like that he would construct, not like that monstrosity that they gave us. Has enough little technical stuff in there to make it more believable that Cyborg actually constructed this. So I was really happy that it all worked out, and really fun, really works well, looks good on this figure. Now, I did make some attachments. I first made this like added little blaster, and I modified it. I don't even know where this came from, but I modified it to fit in the porthole of the cannon from KGB Beast and then painted it as well. Now, this just gives like an added extra cannon feature where he can shoot, or like he morphed his, cannon into a little bit more of like a military style cannon. So I built this myself. All the parts were from my father. So really happy with this. And it's just something that I put together on my own. Now, I wasn't done because what I wanted was for this to kind of look like a cannon blaster. And don't ask me how I did it, but I took that same Batarang from the Endless Winter Batman. I have tons of those. And I split it down the middle, modified it. Now, you do have to flip the cannon the other way so that this works and it looks a lot better. But I fixed it to where you can mount this, and now you have a more traditional cyborg hand cannon that shoots a beam out. Really looks cool, and I put it together all on my own. Now, this really opens up your figure photography. I can't explain to you how long I spent playing with this guy, putting him in poses, even where you pose him up and you put him in hand. And, a lot of people do this on Instagram and just, pose him around. Really was so much fun that it was hard to put this guy down once you get all the accessories, and he's really fun to work with and do figure photography. And an even better benefit that happened was the added articulation. You can get some really dynamic poses, crunching, running into action. Awesome, awesome custom cyborg figure. So, anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Do have a lot of videos I want to do, so trying to get some free time so I could work on those for you guys. But as always, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.